Range. Yes. Tesla range. Okay, I wanted to talk about how the range is calculated with the Tesla. And this is a Model S, the range should be 387, when all is wonderful and perfect. And I'll show you some pics here as we go along that kind of give you an idea of what it says, but what it's actually thinking. Because when you look at the range on these things, on the screen in front of the steering wheel, it'll show a range. Now, if I charge the car to 100%, it's probably going to show 387. And that's what the range is supposed to be in the car. But that isn't the real range. And I'm not sure why they put that there. Okay, if you go onto the main screen and you look up energy and consumption, you'll see another number. Now that other number is different than the one that's on the screen in front of the steering wheel. But on the consumption, it's going to say 291. Now that's a pretty big difference. It's pretty close to 100 miles, But what it's taking into account is what's happening in the last 30 miles of your driving. So when you're driving, like the case I'm talking about, we had about a 30-degree temperature outside. I was driving on the highway at about 60, 65 miles an hour. It's going to take into account what happened to you in the last 30 miles to determine how far that car should go. It's going to be different than what is in front of the steering wheel. Now I've got another pickup there that's showing the range when we're pretty close to being empty. We only got 48 miles. And if I look at the consumption chart is going to say 53. Now that's taking into account the last 30 miles again. If you look at that consumption chart, of course, it shows you average 254 on the left side, projected 53 miles. Okay, it's taking that average of 254 and projecting a little bit longer mileage than the one under the steering wheel. The reason for that is it's calculating it a little differently. If you look at the consumption chart, you can see a big dip in that chart going back 30 miles. That was because there was a long downhill run that made a difference. Because if you look back on some of these earlier ones, you'll see average of more like 330. That's taking into account the last 30 miles that the thing saw. So what does all these numbers mean? Well, I can't tell you everything because I don't know everything about how these things work. But the one that's under the steering wheel is kind of the, hey, everything is wonderful. I love this car. It's going to be perfect. When it starts out. As you start moving and this thing starts showing that you really don't have that many miles. When we were showing the 365, our average was 330. So it's calculating this stuff. As you go through a trip, the one beneath the steering wheel actually seems to become a little more accurate. It starts out too high. Seems to start out too high most of the time. But as you start going, it starts getting more and more accurate as you get closer to empty. Now, if I want to look at one, I think, well, a charging station, do I need to go to a charging station? I'm going to look at the consumption chart. It may not be accurate either if, like I showed, there was a drop, a big drop in the last 30 miles, and it showed the average being far less usage than the chart was showing when the thing was full of charge. So it's not simple how this works. This one's actually, it's a little different than the Chevy Bolt. I thought the Chevy Bolt was really accurate. It started out accurate and ended up accurate as far as I could tell. Unless I was, the temperatures had changed a lot or something. It was giving you a fairly accurate one. The Tesla, I'm not sure is quite so accurate, at least in that one under the steering wheel. It's kind of giving you a golden hue to how far you're going to go. And the real range on the trip that I'm showing was very close to the consumption chart. It came out pretty close. So I'd be looking at that consumption chart and making most of my estimations off of that. This is probably the worst time of year. We're in the middle of December. Temperatures are cold. I'm heating the car up, and there's some drop in efficiency because of snow on the road and things like that. There wasn't much snow on the road at this time, but there was some resistance to roll it. So I don't know. Look at the consumption chart. It's probably going to be the most accurate. It doesn't tell you the nice things you'd like to see, but it's probably the most accurate. I hope this helps. That's it on this one.